kids, and what do we want the city to look like 50 years from now? And, you know, if there's ever a time to like just stop and kind of figure it out and have it make sense, so it stays the same, it doesn't change, you know, every time we get new leadership. That'd be helpful.
Can you be a little bit more specific about the signing? You have already money to do it, and also the Toppens mural is part of the whole idea you have on Dixie Highway.
What was the first one?
The
Signage.
Sign. And the Toppens.
The signage is, I don't think anybody would disagree with me when I tell you, for one thing, you have to come into the city and you have to find the downtown. And then when you do find the downtown, you know, good luck finding different things like parking or the golf course or where I-95 is from the downtown, all these different things. So we have put $25,000 in our budget next year, and are hoping to work with the city, so it's a citywide plan on coming up with a signage plan. Now that's not saying I'm going to have signage out next year, but at least it starts the process of coming up with what it, you know, we know what the other cities have, and we don't want to do exactly what other cities do, but we do want to have, you know, some way of people coming into the city and finding our downtown and having a pleasant journey along the way. So it's, again, it's part of that whole ecosystem that needs to work together. So we have to look at transportation when we're looking at Dixie Highway. And like I said, all those other things that come along. So Tuppence, we have the mural project that started with Lula, and you know, that's one of the tools that we're using just to really make buildings look different, to improve the way that they look, but also to distinguish Lake Worth from other areas. We don't have a lot on Dixie Highway yet, but we do have Academy for Positive Learning, and now we have Tuppence murals. And my hope is that, you know, this really kind of takes off and not only provides jobs to artists and opportunities for artists, but it also is a way to really, again, distinguish ourselves from other communities and just be a little different. And, you know, so far so good. It's been very successful and everybody's pretty happy with it. So I'm really hoping that continues.
I don't think anyone disagrees that we're a little different. Don't worry about that. This question might be better for William, maybe for you. You know, again, I hate to keep focusing on this, but the whole automobile versus pedestrian, to me, strikes as a really big problem in Dixie. But there's got to be parking, I get that. So, you know, what options are there? There's garages, there's street lots, there's on-street parking. What is the realistic option for Dixie Highway as far as offering parking to the businesses? I mean, are we going to try to put a street lot every 3 or 4 blocks, or are we going to put a big garage on each end? Or are we going to try to convince the DOT to give us on-street parking? I mean, what, and maybe many other options. And maybe you don't have an answer, but.
Well, I like to think I have an answer anyway.
Okay.
I'd like to start with DOT and hammering on them, because it'll probably take about 30 years to try to change somebody's mind there anyway. And then at the same time, I think there's a lot of opportunities, not only redevelopment opportunities, but opportunities for us, and Lynn can correct me if I'm off base here, of providing at least temporary lots. You know, and I don't know whether they all have to be paved and lighted and all that other stuff, but, you know, in a lot of other redevelopment areas, they use them temporarily until there's, you know, obviously a mass, you know, created that the parking is actually becomes permanent.
Yeah, that is an option under the code. Where it's difficult, and we can come up with various means to overcome that difficulty, is that many of those transitional blocks that are created are built to a standard view parking lot. The Tri-Rail parking lot across from Publix west of Lake Worth Road, west of 95, is such an animal. It's landscaped nicely, it's got lighting, and it's a holding place that eventually, hopefully at some point that will be a TOD community. We do want to advocate and encourage cross-access easements and use easements so that if a new business comes in, like there's, for example, the El Presidente supermarket. That's a ton of parking. I've never seen that parking lot more than a third full. Well, why can't other people use that? But it has to be managed in some way, because there are liabilities that people come in and get broken into. They're going to get mad at the property owner or whatever else. So we have a lot of parking on Dixie Highway. It's just not overly readily accessible. There isn't a movement called the 750, I believe, which is looking at what Florida will be like around the 7 counties in the Gulf Coast region in 50 years. And as we get into other means of transit, like not just the high-speed rail on the FEC tracks, but intra-city service, which is eventually going to happen, FDOT may be more open to reducing the capacity and speed along Dixie Highway because there are other options to get around in the city. We don't have the best public transportation system when it comes to buses. Our demographics can't afford cabs, so we have tons of them in the city. And we don't have any rail transit except for the CSX and the Tri-Rail. So as those other opportunities come along and they're envisioned, then we can look at reducing the travel speed, maybe the capacities of Dixie Highway. Also, one option too, and Ms. Hanson, I used to be the preservation coordinator for Arlington County.
Okay.
So I know exactly what you're talking about. But that was a concerted 20-year commitment, and there were neighborhoods that were lost. That is something that has to be talked about from a political standpoint is, what aspects of Lake Worth possibly are going to be willing to be given up and wholesale changed in order to benefit the greater vast majority of the whole city. If the city really, really wants every single 100 residential area to stay that way, then Dixie Highway, our idea of having more mixed use there, probably isn't going to work because there's never going to be the demographics and the population to support all those. But if you look at the area here, and Chris, if you could just move that map to the south a little bit, there could be opportunities as these big blocks redevelop to provide secondary, larger means of north-south traffic. So that if you could, you come down here, and let's say in the big world, the big picture person in Arlington did this, someone bought a lot of these and they did an assemblage, then what about if this road came down and turned, and this was the south, and this was the north, and they were like landscape boulevards. That's how Paris got redone with the Burnham, and then Chicago with the Burnham plan, and L'Enfant in Washington, D.C. They plan for different grades of roads. And we can probably provide the same level of service at Dixie if we're open to other streets being somewhat modified. That takes a really big picture, and that's 10, 15, 20-year commitment. But we know we're not going to turn around Dixie Highway in the next 5 years. It's going to change, and a lot's changed in Dixie Highway in West Palm. But I moved here in 1990, and West Palm is struggling with Dixie and Broadway still. And they've been making concerted efforts to that area for a long time. I think that Joan is right that we need to collaborate with other municipalities at a regional level because the county does want to funnel more people to the east. And try to figure out how we can accommodate a variety of different modes of traffic and transportation so that there are changes that can be made to Dixie Highway. Because there are some opportunities along there. For whatever reason, I don't know how it happened, the right-of-way of Dixie and Lake Worth is constrained as anywhere I've been. I mean, West Palm still has some parking, even though it has 2 lanes in each direction. There are some low belts. When you get to Lake Worth, there's nothing. And we have a greater challenge. But it's not that we can't overcome that.
Great attitude. Okay, so where do we go from here? All right. One at a time. Mr. Material. You know how this goes, right? State your name for the record.
Ontario, 701 Dixie Highway. William Mortis is very, very correct. West Palm Beach has been struggling with this for a long time. I was, for the last 5 years, on 2 Dixie Highway visioning committees. And the same things we're talking about, they were talking about. They came up with hundreds and hundreds of ideas. And the biggest roadblock was, of course, no pun intended, FDOT. They always look at Dixie Highway as a way to move traffic, like you already talked about. One of the things that West Palm Beach has started doing is really making efforts to talk with FDOT, and they're receptive. They're getting good responses from FDOT, and I think what the feeling is that all the cities have the same vision, that FDOT is more willing to start working on it with that, instead of going from one city and then stopping and having something different than going into another city. they're more willing to do it if all the cities get on their back and start saying, look, we need to do this. In those two visioning committees of 30 maybe or so people, what it finally came down to was funding. They don't have the money to do everything that they wanted to do. And I think that the best thing that came out of it was to brand Dixie Highway. Do the low-hanging fruit first and start marketing Dixie Highway. You don't have to get it designated historic. Let's make it historic ourselves. Let's just call it Historic Dixie Highway. I mean, most people look at the topographical ridge that runs along Florida as the backbone of Florida. But really, Dixie Highway is the backbone of Florida. And that's the way it's always been. And we lost that, and we need to bring that back. So if we just put banners up that say, celebrate Dixie Highway, or welcome to historic Dixie, even if it's not designated as such, we see it as historic. And then what they came up with was also an incentive program for businesses for beautification. So they thought they could offer planners and have a tree program that the CRA offered maybe incentive for the business. You buy the planter, we'll buy the plant. Or you buy the plant, we'll buy the planter type thing to start dressing up some of the businesses on Dixie. So I thought I'd do that.
Thanks.
Anyone else from the public? Sir, state your name for the record if you would.
Robert Gonzalez, at the corner of 14th and North Dixie. Been there since 1979.
North or south?
On the west side, north. More specific, the body shop. At that location. Been there since 1979. You know, we had to struggle with the bridge being closed many years ago. But you know, one of the things that I keep listening to, but I don't get a direct answer, is do we have a theme yet? Do we have a theme for the city? And I think if we're all on the same page, then we can follow that. I like the historic or nostalgic drive into Dixie Highway. I kind of like the word nostalgic instead of historic, but you know, that would be one direction to go with the theme. But also, you know, what direction are we going with the city of Lakewood? That Key West style, I thought it fit the ticket. I don't know if that went anywhere, but once and for all, if we can come up with a theme, then we can all be on the same page, and then put the banners and brag about our city. I'm excited that, you know, I see new energy and direction for the city. Been here since about 1970, and even went to Barton Elementary. So I've been around for a long time, and I plan to be here for the rest of my life. So I like to see it move forward, and I'll like to be part of that group that you're developing to get more business in the city. So call me in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Mary Lindsay, 327 Columbia Drive, just right off Heritage Highway. I am so excited to hear about a Dixie Merchants Association. I think that's been needed for a really long, long time. People who've invested their businesses, their money, their time, their effort, their sweat, their employees into Dixie Highway, they know, you know, they know what they need, they know what the disincentives are. And the ones that have been there a long time, like Mr. Gonzalez and there's so many others there, they haven't just had their business there, they've had their lives there. They're our neighbors, they're part of our neighborhood. I really hope to see that Merchants Association get off the ground in a hurry. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to operate, if it's a part of the CRA. I mean, are they still an independent group? Are they a nonprofit?
No, we're just gonna give them the support that they need, pull them all together, and then give, you know, be there to prop them up, and then just push them in the right direction.
Yeah, great.
That's my hope.
Yeah, I can get behind that 100%. I think it's a wonderful idea. And, I've seen the Heritage Highway plan, and I've heard Mr. Blackman talk about it for a long time, as well as Mr. Keir. It's a fabulous idea, and it's, can we get moving on this soon? Yeah?
We certainly don't have the answers for, some people who've been there for 30, 40 years.
Good evening, Nadine Burns, 1424 North L Street, and part of the chamber office downtown. I really think that there's so much good information here and good information for the city that we need to get it out to our community, to be able to let the business owners know that those impediments that are here, we hear a lot from people in the city, in the Park of Commerce area as well as in the downtown and other areas that they'd like to expand, they would like to do things, and we haven't had any direction. I know that the master plan process that way back when I was on the commission started, that it was such good news to see that finally come in and close, and there isn't, like William said, you could do a thesis on what's allowed. We'd send people that come into the chamber, if they're in the CRA district, we send them to Joan so that they can, know that this is available, find out what aspects of her organization can help them, to William, to everybody, and a lot of times they come back more confused when they hit the city. It's better now, people are coming to the chamber and they're saying, oh, this is great, we met great staff, they knew what they were talking about, and I think the excitement that this land development regulations and all this other information is there, it will really help, and I think the business community here can help support that. Lake Worth has unknotted those red tape and those ribbons that have everybody strangled, and we can straighten out that, deficiencies that were here for so long, so long, that it'll move everybody forward. But the chamber's here to support it. We spent the afternoon dropping what we were doing to call and make sure that we get enough presence from our members and the business owners and such on the corridor. There was a lot of interest from others that couldn't make it on the short notice, and we're going to get them feedback and connect them with Joan and the CRA office so they can get minutes and everything that they need and get up to speed. And we'll be joining together with some good workshops and programs to get all of this information out there. So thank you all very, very much. Thank you.
Mr. Rice, please.
Greg Rice, 511 Lucerne Avenue. I too want to thank whoever put this little symposium together tonight to try to get some of the stakeholders that we have here in the room on Dixie Highway and of course others around town to start and discuss this. Kim, you mentioned Del Rey, like it or for better or for worse or whatever the term you used, and then Joan, you said that we don't want to be like other cities necessarily, but I read a paper that was written by Jeff Perlman, who was a former mayor of Del Rey, and it's on his blog actually, and it was called 12 Critical Steps, the decisions that helped create the modern Del Rey. If you haven't read it, it's certainly worth reading. And it goes back to 1985. I lived in Palm Beach County, of course, back then. And if anybody else in this room was here back then, you'll realize and remember that you got off at 95 at Atlantic Avenue and you headed east. You were praying to God you didn't run out of gas, have a flat tire or whatever, so you crossed Swinton Avenue, and even then, there was nothing down there. I mean, there was nice buildings, old buildings and all, but it wasn't the entertainment hub that it is today. And this paper that he wrote describing these 12 critical steps kind of outlines what we as a community need to really consider. I know our commission last Saturday had a visioning session, but it was still more like a workshop and discussion mainly between themselves. But we need to focus on this because it's not an overnight fix. but it is something that if stakeholders and interested people and people that have the vision to move Lakewood forward, can start building these small building blocks that we can, 25 years down the road, or 28 years now since 85 with Del Rey, we can implement some of these ideas that we all talk about. Another thing, and I don't like to sound like a broken record, but I will, in addition to those other things that we outlined, we do have to also realize that when it comes to attracting commercial business in Lakewood, one of the big obstacles that we face, and even though there was a discussion last night, the budget meeting or hearing, our commercial electric rates are still the highest in the state. Huge disincentive, huge disincentive. And I know the commission has mandated that in 5 years they're gonna work to reach parity with FPNL, but even the rate expert that was here last night kept repeating over and over and over again that our commercial rates are the highest in the state. And that is a big, big, big pill for anybody to swallow. And especially a business that can go a few miles in either direction and find more competitive rates. And so that's another thing that we have to make sure that we focus on. It's great that we lowered electric rates for the residential user and even the small to down mid-sized business users, but those 70-something, I think they said, high electric users are generating 11 or 12% of the revenue that our city utility, or electric utility, generates in a year, and we have to have that for our lifeblood. We didn't have that, we'd be turning the keys over to Bob Weissman, and we wouldn't be the little city that we are. But anyhow, I encourage everybody to try to find that blog or paper or whatever that Parliament wrote on Del Rey, kind of taking the steps from 1985 chronologically to where they are today or whatever. And even though we don't have to copy them, we can certainly learn from the successes and the mistakes of our surrounding community in the past. Thank you.
Good evening, Wes Blackman, 241 Columbia Drive. I'm about a block from Dixie Highway, and I go up and down it every day. The concept of the Heritage Highway, we are a historic community. We're celebrating our centennial year, 2013. US 1 did not exist in 1913. They started existing in the 1920s, and people primarily got here by train or other means, but very limited other means. But we really grew up around US 1. And in the 1970s, when 95 was completed, suddenly the blood that is represented by the cars on the roadway switched from US 1 to I-95. So in essence, we are dealing with a problem and reacting to a problem that really hit us as a historic community that was built along US 1 40 years now. For 40 years, this has been an issue. So it's not going to go away tomorrow. And the concept of a heritage highway is not a panacea by any means. We're not going to put all our eggs in that basket, but it can be a tool. And it can start small and grow. And you might have heard of Route 66, famous Route 66, the Mother Road, and the Jodes, and Grapes of Brown. Well, we have a different story to tell, but it can be told about US 1, and there aren't too many. I can't think of one South Florida community that is really honoring US 1 as the way people got to their community to build their community in the first place. So there are groups and ways to market that could really be an attraction for tourism. I'm thinking of motorcycle people. I'm thinking of antique car people, which I have a lot of connections with. My dad is very active in the hobby. We could really become a destination. And again, I'm not saying it's going to solve all our problems, but it is an avenue.